overwhelmed. Let me just fix this angle a little bit. We started this last week. And to start things off this week, I just want to review what we talked about last week because it actually sets up where we're going and what we're doing this week. So, you volunteer? Volunteer. All right, Matthew. All right, Matthew represents you in this case. So Matthew, go ahead and hold this rope. Okay. All right, and then we need this whole row of people. Come up here. All y'all. Come, just like hold the rope kind of, and hold this, right? All right, so we talked about how, and I actually made these cards based off of what I heard from you guys, things that stress you out. Homework, stressing some of you guys out. Schoolwork, homework, politics, what's going on in the world, social media, family. Teresa, you're going to join us. You guys have to scoot together a little bit. Not that way. And then Matthew, you got to scoot this way a little bit, okay? Okay. All right, so relationships can stress you out. Family, especially if there's friction at home, fights, quarreling, social media, politics, homework. These are some of the main things I heard from you guys last week that are stressing you out, causing anxiety, overwhelm. And this perfectly states why overwhelm can happen, because it's not just one thing or two things for many of us. There's like 500 things it feels like. Many of you seniors, like, what am I going to do next year? Period. Am I going to go to college or not? Which college? How do I go about deciding that? When it comes to relationships, there's, for some reason, a lot of drama between guys and girls. I'm like, does she like me? Does he like me? How do I know? What should I do about it?
I know two people who don't have to worry about that.
Right? All these things can cause stress and anxiety in us, and especially when there's a bunch of them. So, last week we looked at the really cool story of Jesus being in the boat with his disciples when there was a storm. And they were literally being overwhelmed by waves. The disciples freak out, wake Jesus up, like, don't you care that we're drowning, Jesus? And he calmed the sea just with his voice by speaking, because that's who Jesus is, the one who can calm the seas. And then he turns to his disciples and says, why are you so afraid? And that was the main point we talked about last week. Why are you so afraid? Because the truth is, if you're a follower of Jesus, then it's like
Nothing.
It's like, not only is Matthew facing all these things, but the fact is he's not alone. And that Jesus himself, the one who can calm the storms just with the words he says, who actually created the whole world and all of these things, is in the boat with you. And so, in some ways, there's nothing to be afraid of. The one who can calm the storms is in the boat with you. So that was last week. But let's say now, Matthew or you are in the position where you're like, okay, I'm okay. I don't have to be overwhelmed by this because Jesus is in the boat with me. I can face this. Now, in some ways, that still leaves you with a problem. The question is this: how do you face all these things? Or when do you face all these things? Which one do you face first if you're going to face off against them one by one? And that's the topic of tonight's discussion. Because if you've ever experienced this before, overwhelm can be paralyzing. Have you guys ever had this experience where there were so many things to do that you didn't know where to start, and so you didn't? You guys ever done that before? It's like, I am so busy. There are so many things to do. There's so many things stressing me out. I don't even know where to start, so I'm just not going to start. You guys experience that? Right? So, the question is, what should you do when you're facing all these things? Where do you start? That's the question for tonight. Thank you, volunteers. You're awesome. You can just set that right down.
I'm your biggest fan.
Thank you. So, where do you begin? Where do you start? I want to share with you a quote, and we're going to be looking at this quote this week and next week. There's a part of this quote I love, and there's a part of this quote I don't love. It's called the Serenity Prayer. And when I say it, many of you will know where this comes from or be familiar with this. Here is the Serenity Prayer. It goes like this: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You guys ever heard that before? Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So here's piece number one I want to talk about tonight, is that some of these things are a little bit outside your control. I want to encourage you to just pause the overwhelm on those things, because there's some of those things that maybe are not your job to pull on. Like, for example, this one. Many people, this is causing them lots of stress, anxiety, fighting, bickering. And here's the truth. When it comes to affecting what is going on in Washington, D.C. right now, I can pull on that rope as hard as I want. It's not going to make much of a difference. Does that make sense? So the Serenity Prayer says, God, help me accept the things I cannot personally change. I cannot really affect much of what's going on in Washington, D.C. Maybe if I tried with all my might, did a lot of work, I could change things like this much, okay? So the Serenity Prayer goes on to say, give me the courage to change the things I can. Give me the courage to change the things I can. So there are some things that maybe you just need to stop pulling on, but some things maybe you can change. Relationships, social media, what you say on it, what you look at on it, how you post, how you dance on TikTok. Family. Maybe there's a piece of what goes on in your family that you don't have control over. You don't have control over your parents and how they choose to parent you. You don't have control over that. But you do have control over how you react to that parenting. You do have control how you respond to your siblings, right? So there are some things here you can control and some things you can't. So here's my first point I want to say. Accept the things that you can change. I feel like when it comes to this whole thing, right? Some of you guys are really overwhelmed about things that you don't really have any control over. And I think what God would call you to do is to courageously start pulling on the things you can actually affect or improve. And those things you can't, no. Spoiler alert for next week. I actually don't love the first part of the Serenity Prayer. To accept the things I cannot change. I think actually we're called to do something about that. But that's the topic for next week. But tonight I want to talk about the courage to change the things you can. I want to encourage you to have the courage to change the things you can change. But again, that's just another way of raising the same question, which is this. Which things should you work on first? Even if you throw out all the things you can't change, there are still a big list of things you can change. So where do you start? What do you do? And so this is the story we're going to look at tonight. Mark chapter 1. If you have a Bible, open to Mark chapter 1. Tap on your phone. Just a little bit of backstory. This is where Jesus is just beginning his public ministry. He's just beginning to teach in synagogues and heal people, and he's becoming known as this miracle worker, amazing rabbi that people really respect and admire. So here's what it says. That evening, Mark 1:32. I didn't give you a verse. Mark 1:32. Mark 1:32. It says, that evening after sunset, many sick and demon-possessed people were brought to Jesus. The whole town gathered at the door to watch. So Jesus healed many people who were sick with various diseases, and he cast out many demons. But because the demons knew who he was, he did not allow them to speak. Pause. If your goal is to help people, heal people, teach the good news about the kingdom of God, is this good or bad? This is good, right? People are recognizing Jesus for who he is, why he came, right? And if I was in Jesus' shoes, it'd be a little bit overwhelming, right? People are lining up outside the door. There's a lot of needs to be met. A lot of people who need healing, demon-possessed people who need release from this, a lot of people ready to hear this teaching about the kingdom of God. It'd be very easy to be overwhelmed by this, but look at what Jesus does. Before daybreak the next morning, before the sun came up, Jesus got up, and he went out to an isolated place to pray. We're going to talk about prayer next week. Later, Simon, who became known as Peter, and the others went out to find Jesus. When they found him, they said, everyone's looking for you. In other words, Jesus, there's already a line for me. Right? There's people who are sick, can't keep their food down. There's people who can't walk, and their friends carried them to this house. Everyone's looking for you. There's people who need healing, Jesus, and they're waiting for you. Everyone's looking for you. But Jesus replied, we must go on to other towns as well, and I will preach to them too. That is why I came. So he traveled throughout the region of Galilee, preaching in the synagogues and casting out demons. All right. So here's what's amazing to me, is that Jesus left needs that he he could have met unmet in that town. He left that. Growing in popularity, people are waiting, and he left that. Now, why? There's two reasons. Number one, prayer. Again, we're going to talk about prayer more next week. But number two, I think if you look at what Jesus did, he's asking and answering a very important question. He's asking himself the question, and meditating on it, thinking about, what is the most important thing for me to do next to accomplish the work for which the Father sent me? That's what he's thinking about. What is the most important thing for me to do today to accomplish the work for which the Father sent me? And he realizes, I can't stay here. There's things I could do here, but the most important thing for me to do today, to do what God has called me to do, is to move on to other towns. Do you see where he says that? He says, we must go on to other towns as well, and I will preach to them too. That is why I came. That is why I came. Not just to meet all the needs I could in one village, but actually to spread that teaching so many people can hear the good news about me. So, here is the principle I'm kind of drawing out from Jesus and how he responded to these overwhelming needs. The principle is this: it's actually impossible to face everything at once. Okay? It's impossible to face everything at once. You have to face things one at a time. And the question that Jesus was reflecting on is, what's most important now? What's most important now? I'm going to simplify that to make it more memorable. I want you to focus on the win. W-I-N. What's important now? What's important now? So say that with me. What's important now?
What's important now?
One more time, as if you actually are interested in this. All right, what's important now? What's important now?
What's important now?
Sorry. You guys are so awesome. I know. I'm sorry. I'll work on my repeating skills. Leading, repeating. I'm not skilled at that. Okay. Don't know where to begin? Focus on the win. Okay, that's the main idea for today. Don't know where to begin? Don't know where to start? Focus on the win. And I don't mean winning a game. I mean what's important now. Focus on what is most important now. So, that's senior. You've got homework. You've got college. You've got family drama. You've got politics, right? You've got relationships, social media, all these things. You're feeling overwhelmed. And the principle is this: instead of trying to face off against all of this, you take these things one at a time. Got home from school, you got a lot of homework, and you might say, you know what? This is not important right now. This is what's most important right now. And here is what I encourage you to actually literally do. Hey, social media, be quiet for a minute. I'll deal with you in a minute. Homework. Yep, let's start tugging. Let's go at this. Let's focus on this. So, don't know where to begin. Focus on the win. What's important now? Riddle that many of you guys have heard. How do you eat an elephant? Thank you. One bite at a time. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's the principle that I want to encourage you to address when you feel overwhelmed. Here's what I want to encourage you to do, and we're going to take space and time to do in just a minute. When you are feeling overwhelmed, here's what I want you to do. I want you to list out all the things that are causing you stress and anxiety. Just list them all out. And what might happen is you might feel more stressed and anxious as you do that. Oh my goodness, and this thing too. This is also causing me stress, and this, and this. Then what I want you to do next is, at least for the purposes of what we're talking about this week, I want you to cross out everything that you do not have direct control over. Politics, cross it out. I don't like my parents' curfew. Cross it out, right? All the things that are stressing you out that you don't have control over, I want you to cross out. And then what's remaining, this is what you do. You look through that list, and you prayerfully ask God, out of all these things, what is most important now? And then you come up with a plan to address that thing, and you do it. And then you look back at that list, and you have one less thing that's overwhelming you. And you ask that question again. And you do the next thing. And pretty soon, this big crowd of things that was overwhelming you is getting smaller and smaller. And you are working to improve and change the things that you can actually work to improve change. So don't know where to begin? Focus on the win. What does WIN stand for?
What's important now?
Yes. What's important now? Thank you. That was beautiful. Don't worry about it. All right. So without further ado, we're going to do this. I think this is going to be helpful for you. So there's two sides of this handout. Ignore the back side for now. The back side says My Anxiety Response Plan. It'll look similar to next week from last week what we talked about. Ignore that for now. I want you to make an overwhelming list. All right? I want you to make an overwhelming list. I'm going to give you a couple moments in silence to list out all the things that are stressing you out and do the process we just talked about. Everything that's causing you overwhelm, list it out. Then cross out the things that you don't have control over. Then prayerfully ask God, what is the most important thing for me to work on now? Now, you probably won't be able to address that thing tonight, but I want you to leave tonight with a plan of what's most important for me to address first, and when are you going to do that? And I kind of have a plan of attack for that thing. So if some leaders would help me pass these out, that'd be awesome. And pens too. Oh, yeah. So you get up and you go. Anyone need a pen? You guys got them?
I just took one from there, yeah. All right.
Anyone not get a list or pen? All right, this is your time. Write out all the things causing you stress, anxiety. Just list them all out. And then keep your pen when you're done because you're going to need it in small group. Okay? If you haven't done it yet, go ahead and finish your list. Then begin crossing out all those things you cannot influence or improve yourself. haven't done it yet, I want you to spend a minute and ask God, God, what is most important now? Look back through your list and prayerfully ask God, what is the most important thing for me to face off against and work towards change on? And circle that answer. And then finally, make a plan of attack. Whatever thing you circled, what could you do to work to improve or change that thing? Plan out, what are you going to do? Are you going to do it tomorrow? Are you going to do it on Wednesday? What are you going to do to work to improve that thing? All right, how many of you need more time? Raise your hand if you need more time. Take one more minute. All right, I just want to add one more thing. You might do this, and you look at the list and you're like, I don't know what's the most important for me. And the reason for that could be because you may be a little unclear about your God-given purpose. Like, again, look at what Jesus said. We must go on to other towns as well, and I will preach to them too. That is why I came. Jesus knew exactly what his purpose was, and that was clarifying for him. And so you might need to spend some time praying, reflecting, journaling, talking to your parents about your God-given purpose. Now, there's some things in that are true for all followers of Jesus, and there are some things that are going to be unique to you depending on your gifts and your passions. Okay? But if you want to talk more about that, we can address that, like bring it up in small group, and we'll go there. We can go there. All right. Actually, let's just do a poll. For how many of you was this clarifying? Like, oh, this is what I should be working on. I didn't realize that. How many of you this is clarifying? Right? A few of you? How many of you feel a little less stressed or a little less overwhelmed? All right, a few of you as well. Not all of you. That's all right. How many of you would feel less stressed, overwhelmed if you had just finished whatever plan of attack you said? Like, here's what I need to change this thing. If you just finished that, how many of you would feel less stressed, overwhelmed? Okay. A few more of you. All right. So earlier this week, I had a funny thing happen. This last week was my first week at CCU teaching Old Testament. So I teach New Testament in the fall, Old Testament in the spring. And I was just kind of introducing myself. I'm like, oh, I'm the associate pastor of youth and worship at Creekside Community Church. So I lead the youth ministry and the worship ministry, and then I have some associate pastor roles. Like we lead a small group in our home. Sometimes I preach on Sunday mornings. And then when COVID happened, I kind of had to take over the tech team and like work really hard on that and understanding and improving that. We have Janelle and I are married. We have 4 young kids at home. So that's a lot of work. We just got a new puppy, and we like house projects, so we're working on the shed. You just kept listening to these things. I wasn't trying to lie. I was just like, this is who we are. And the student was like, how do you do all that? And there were several things that came to mind, but one thing I didn't actually say in the moment, but part of the reason I can do all that is because over the years, I've actually done what you guys just did pretty consistently. Now, I'm My system of organization is a little more elaborate than this, but if you get under the complexity, it's really just list out all the stuff there is to do, prioritize it, ask what's most important now, and then do that thing, and then do the next thing, and then do the next thing, and then do the next thing. If I did not do something like this, number one, there is no way I could remember in my head all the things I have to do. Like, I would drop half of them. I'd forget to call people back or text people or follow up with them. I forget that sometimes anyway. But it's because I forget to write it down. And I feel like actually it's been really, really helpful. So tonight was partly about me wanting to give you something that I think will be helpful for you. You list out all the things you could do. Prayerfully ask God what's most important now for what you have for me to do, and then do that, and then do the next thing, and do the next thing. And the point is not to be really busy or really unbusy. In fact, there are a lot of wise Christians who would say, actually, my busyness is a sign of my immaturity, not my maturity. And I think they have actually a good point there. So I'm not saying, hey, go be really busy. I'm saying, don't be overwhelmed. Don't give in to stress and overwhelm and anxiety. Don't focus on a bunch of things that you cannot control anyway. Prayerfully bring your overwhelm to God. And say, God, with your help, what do you want me to focus on next? What do you want me to focus on after that? And if you consistently do that, I think and I believe you will be much less overwhelmed by your busyness or things causing you anxiety. And not only that, but you will actually get a lot more done in working to improve and change some of those things that are stressing you out. So that's my prayer for you guys. Let me pray for us, and we'll go to small groups, and you'll get to share your plan. And then, again, bring this, because on the back side, you're going to have some time to fill out and expand the anxiety response plan you started next week. All right? God, thank you for this time. Thank you for these students. I pray that you would ease that sense of overwhelm that some of them are feeling even now, God. Pray for our students that, again, that they would remember that fundamental point that you are with them, that the one who can calm the seas is in the boat with them. God, I pray you give each of these students wisdom about what things they should focus their time and energy on and how they could work to improve and change those things and to slowly do those things. God, help us not give in to anxiety and overwhelm, but to walk with you, to trust you, and to work for change in those things that you've called us to work for change in. Give us openness and honesty in our small groups now, and we ask these things in your name, Jesus. Amen. All right, we're going to split up for small groups now. So middle school girls are going to head out with Janelle, middle school guys with Seth. We may take the high school guys, and high school girls are with Teresa.
Where the country